Hey friends, it's Shireen aka Halal Girl New York, and welcome back to the channel. Those of you guys who have been following my journey on Instagram, or of course who know me personally, will know that I live in New York. However, I'm actually from the UK. Today my video is going to be all about what the heck I'm doing in America, why I decided to leave the country that was home for the first 23 years of my life, why I took the leap and swam across the pond, metaphorically. I'm not very good at swimming. So let's begin. So let's first quickly address why I'm wearing scrubs for this video. There is absolutely no reason why I'm wearing scrubs for this video. They're kind of new and I haven't taken them for a spin yet. And this video actually is quite medical related. It's not going to be super listy, and there's not going to be too many fun and crazy animations like this one, and this one. So let's start from the start. I was born and raised in the UK, where I've lived my entire life. In 2012, when I was 18 years old, I went to medical school. I got admission into one of my top choice universities, which was King's College London. After 6 years in medical school, I graduated with my MD/MBBS degree and my Bachelor of Science degree, and I got married to my best friend. That sounds so cheesy, but it's true. He was and still is my best friend. And then I moved to the USA, so that was over a year ago. I spent all of 2019 studying for some super intense exams called the United States Medical Licensing Exams. There are 4 of those, which I sat, and alhamdulillah I passed all of those, which made me eligible to apply for a medical job here in the USA. And in just a few weeks I'll be starting my first job here in America, and I'm just so excited to start and take you guys along with me. It's my dream program and I have literally been daydreaming of this moment. So I feel really blessed and I cannot wait to take you guys along with me. Growing up, I think I always just naturally imagined my future in England, because that's all I ever knew and that's the only place I'd ever really called home. So I was never the kind of girl who was in any active rush to just leave the UK. There's so much about London that I love specifically. I think it's one of the best cities in the whole wide world that I never really imagined leaving. So let me take you back to 2012 when I met my husband, and we met through medical school, but that is a story for another day. So let's just push that story aside for now. Prior to my husband and I getting engaged, he was obviously a medical student at the time and so was I. We would talk about our future quite a lot, naturally, as you do with the person who you're going to be spending the rest of your life, inshallah, with. And his family, although they're all British, they actually live abroad now. So he didn't have any family members in England when he was in medical school. So he did a lot of research into where he could potentially move to after medical school, and something that he was really interested in was moving to the US. So I specifically remember the first time he told me about this concept of moving to the US, I kind of freaked out a little bit. Up until that point, my only experience of America was going on a few one-week vacations with my family. My entire understanding of life in America was basically based on movies and TV shows like, you know, Drake and Josh, That's So Raven, Fresh Prince, basically all the real OG shows back when I was like 12. So that is honestly all I knew about America. And at that point, that's when I decided to really sit down and do my own research and figure out why is it that some people are interested in moving to the US. Obviously, both of us were in medical school. We were medical students at the time, so our futures were our medical careers. I know a huge amount of Pakistani and Indian and Egyptian and doctors from other parts of the world would move to the US, but on the whole, all the British people that I knew who went to med school would just stay there. The first thing I found when I did my research was the difference in the length of training. And what I found was that in the US, the average length of a training job, i.e. a residency program, is around 3 to 5 years depending on your specialty. Whereas in the UK, when you finish medical school, the average length of training for a junior doctor is between 5 to 10 years. So I personally found that really interesting, how much shorter the training pathways are in the US. And obviously when you're done with your training, whether that's in the UK or the US, you have so much more autonomy over your schedule and your salaries and just life in general. So that was something that really drew me to the US system. Those years when you're in your mid-20s to your mid-30s, those are such important years of your youth where you might want to consider things like starting a family or saving money for a house. So when you can save 5 or 6 years of time, and not just time, because when you finish your training, obviously your salary increases as well, I kind of realized that maybe there are some advantages of a medical career in the US. And then the second thing I found out was the insane difference in salaries. Let's be honest, you guys, talking about salary and payments or anything to do with money is in general just a taboo topic. People don't really talk about it, but it is honestly a huge part of your life. Whenever we talk about getting a job, whether you're in medicine or not, you ask your employer what your salary is going to be, you plan your future, you plan your savings. So that is definitely a factor that comes into play, whether we like it or not, whether it's fair or not, or whether we should have to consider that or not. I think that if we're being honest with ourselves, our salaries and whether we feel like we're being adequately or fairly paid is a huge factor when it comes to your overall happiness in a job. And that's just a fact of life, I think. Not to go into the salary differences too much, because you can find a lot of each specific specialty and field online. But on average, a trainee doctor in the US makes around twice as much as a trainee doctor in the UK. And once they're done with their training, so that'll be in about 3 or 5 years in the US versus 5 to 10 years in the UK. Once they're done with that and they're both consultants or attending doctors, you make 2 to 3 times as much money as you do as a consultant or attending in the UK. And I'm not here to talk about the differences between a private versus a public healthcare system. There's obviously so many differences. So that was definitely something my husband and I sat down to discuss and kind of take into account. It was not a driving factor in why we moved to the US, but it was definitely something that we considered, and it was definitely something that was an advantage. Another thing that we used to talk about and daydream about together was just having a huge adventure. As beautiful as it could have been had I stayed in the UK, the biggest adventure I could have had was living a very similar life to the one that I already knew. And that was definitely something that was on our pros list when making the decision between UK versus US, because we thought at the very least we're gonna have this huge crazy adventure. So this was around 5 or 6 years ago, back in 2014. So my husband and I had done all of this research, we'd talked about it, we'd seen our options, and we were actually getting really excited. And of course I kept my family in the loop the entire time. He kept his family in the loop. To actually be a doctor in the US and apply for a job here, you have to do all of your USMLE exams. So basically my husband said, let me just sit my step 1 USMLE exam, see how it goes, and keep my options open. And he called up my dad and he asked my dad for permission to sit that exam, because if he did well, it would mean that he would want to move to the US, and then obviously I would also want to move to the US, and that obviously impacts my family. And just out of respect, he decided to call my parents and talk about that. And mashallah, he worked really hard and he got an amazing school. And that was definitely the tipping point for us in kind of deciding, are we going to move to the US? Family is such a huge thing. I have a twin sister, if you didn't know. I have other siblings, I have my loving parents, and I have all my friends. So for me, my heart definitely was and still is torn between the two cities. It was definitely not a rash decision. It was definitely one we thought long and hard of. So we both together decided that he should just apply for residency in the US and see how it goes, and then we can just take everything one step at a time. So long story short, my husband applied for residency. He applied for an extremely competitive job, but alhamdulillah, by the grace of God, he matched into dermatology residency right here in Manhattan. And it was basically his dream job, my dream job for him. So we kind of just took that as one big crazy sign that this is the right thing to do and he should go for it and he should accept this job offer. But remember, he was a couple of years older than me in medical school, so him matching and getting his dream job in a dermatology residency in America did mean that we were kind of thrown into 3 years of long distance. And that was definitely one of the hardest decisions that we've ever had to make. Alhamdulillah, we are on the other end of it. We're living together, we get to see each other every day, and we're having a really blessed life here in the US. But those 3 years of being in long distance was definitely difficult, and it did not come without its struggles. Although it was difficult at the time, we are really glad that we were able to kind of make that decision for our futures and for ourselves. So when my husband moved to New York for his residency, I stayed in London with my family and I finished medical school. And in 2018, I graduated from my medical school, I got married, and then I moved to the US. I found it really difficult to understand or see the positive side of being in long distance, but now when I look back, I find it really beautiful that the way God kind of made it work out was that he put us in long distance, and by putting us in long distance, God made that transition of leaving my family and my loved ones and my home just a little bit easier, because of how happy and excited my husband and I were to finally reunite. And that honestly just brings me to where I am right now, my bedroom in our cozy little Manhattan apartment. I've been living in New York for over a year. New York really does just feel like home now, which is so crazy. I could never imagine anywhere apart apart from London feeling like home. It's certainly not easy just packing up your life and moving across the world. I miss my family and friends every single day, and that's definitely something that's difficult, but it has been a huge adventure and we've had so much fun. And obviously I started my Instagram around the same time that I moved to New York, and I've had a lot of adventures and made so many amazing friends through that too. I've been really loving life here so far. I found a really great group of friends. So that is pretty much, in a very large nutshell, what brought me to the US. And I did touch on some of the differences between a medical career in the UK and the US, but I didn't want to go into too much detail here because I know not everyone watching this is a med student or a doctor, and most of you guys probably aren't even interested in moving to the US. But for those of you who are interested in moving your medical careers to the US, there's a course that a couple of other international doctors and I have been working on and running over the past few years called How to Make It in America, and we're part of a team called Liberty Medics, and it basically goes through like everything you could possibly ever need to know to move your career to the US. And the reason we even started this organization and course was because when we were personally going through it ourselves, there was so much that we wish we knew, that we wish someone told us or taught us, and it's so hard to get all the information that you need in one place. You can spend hours and hours and hours researching, which is what we did do. You end up missing out on time and money and choosing the wrong resources for different exams and things like that. So we just really wanted to create this amazing course that has everything in one place and that can basically help guide you through the entire process step by step. Things like the examinations, how to prepare for them, electives and clinical experience, letters of recommendation, visas, immigration, interviews, application cycles, all of that stuff in one place. We've actually run this course 3 times in person in London, and we had some really amazing feedback. People really enjoyed it, and the Liberty Medics team and I decided to just launch it as an online course just so that it was accessible to anyone around the world who was looking for that information and who wants to make the journey themselves. And I've included a few links in the description box, so feel free to check those out as well. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. You can always leave your comments or questions down below on this video, or you can follow me on Instagram and send me questions through there. And since I'll be starting residency soon, inshallah, I can't wait to share my entire journey of being a doctor here. So if you are interested in learning more about what a career in the US is like for a doctor, you should definitely subscribe so you don't miss out on any of those videos. I really hope you enjoyed hearing more about my journey. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.